Welcome to the Deep Dive.
Great to be here.
Today, we're really getting into something fascinating. The connection, this deep bond between Cole Porter and, well, New York City.
Yeah, it's a great topic. Our source really sheds light on it.
It does. We want to figure out what it was about New York back then, the early 20th century, that just grabbed the young Porter.
And how that relationship sort of grew and changed over his life and, of course, in his music.
Exactly. So for you listening, you'll get a real sense of what shaped this absolute legend and also a feel for that old New York.
A very different New York in many ways.
Definitely. So let's dive in. Our source puts Porter's first big encounters with the city around 1909. He was still a student at Yale then.
Right. And imagine that coming from Peru, Indiana, pretty quiet, affluent, I suppose, and then the sort of traditional world of Yale. New York must have seemed electric.
Oh, absolutely. What parts of the city back then, based on our source, do you think really hit him first?
Well, the source paints a picture of a city just buzzing with change, doesn't it?
It really does. Things like electric streetcars suddenly appearing on Fifth Avenue,
Oh,
elevated trains rattling over downtown Manhattan, and these huge modern hotels shooting up the Waldorf Astoria, the Plaza.
yeah, symbols of a new kind of grandeur. Compared to Yale or Indiana,
Yeah.
it must have felt, as our source says, impossibly alive.
And possibly alive. I like that.
And full of these stark contrasts, too. That's something the source really highlights.
Like what specifically?
Well, you've got these brand new skyscrapers going up, reaching for the clouds, and then right nearby, crowded tenement buildings.
Yeah.
You could walk from, say, an immigrant market full of different languages and smells to these incredibly posh luxury shops in just a few blocks.
And the culture was just as mixed, wasn't it? Opera, vaudeville.
And ragtime, that new, exciting sound was everywhere. It was this incredible mashup.
So thinking about Porter, this young guy, ambitious, artistic,
Mhm.
what was the specific draw for him and all that?
Well, our source suggests New York was a place that really got sophistication. It celebrated style. It valued wit.
And music was central.
Exactly. Music and cleverness were prized. That must have felt like coming home for him, in a way.
And the source mentions the theater district, already buzzing back then, and all those dazzling people in the society columns.
Yeah, the kind of effortlessly stylish, witty people he'd later write about so brilliantly. They were real, and they were there.
There's that great story in our source, the one about him and his Yale friend, John Fitzkellis.
Oh, yeah, that's fantastic. Tell us about it.
Apparently, they'd regularly use the 6 p.m. train from New Haven down to Manhattan.
Just casual trips, then.
Not exactly. They'd change into tuxedos right there on the train platform.
Wow.
Go see a Broadway show, have a fancy dinner at Sherry's, the place to be seen, and then catch the milk train back to New Haven in the wee hours.
As students, that's dedication. It really shows how powerful that pull was, even then. The nightlife, the glamour.
It does. And our source points out these weren't just fun nights out, they were like groundwork.
Formative experiences, absolutely. Planting the seeds for that sophisticated, urbane style that became his signature. You can really see it starting there.
Totally. So even before he graduated, New York wasn't just some city. Our source says it really represented the peak for him, musically speaking.
Right. Broadway, Tin Pan Alley, those society salons. That's where he felt he belonged. That was the goal.
Which leads us to his first attempt at Broadway, See America First, in 1916.
Yeah, which, as our source politely notes, wasn't exactly a smash hit.
No. A bit of a flop, really. But even in that failure, New York was still working on him, wasn't it?
Definitely.
Yeah.
The source emphasizes the connections he was making. In those fancy hotel ballrooms, the private salons, he was meeting people, networking, absorbing the atmosphere.
So the city wasn't just about the stage itself.
Not at all. It was revealing itself as this center, this crucible, as the source puts it,
A crucible of what?
of modern taste, of wit, of refinement, all the things Porter himself came to embody. He was learning the rules of the game, so to speak.
Okay, so let's jump forward to the Roaring Twenties. Our source describes this incredible social whirl in New York.
And Porter was right in the middle of it. It wasn't just a backdrop for him, it was fuel for his creativity.
So where would you find him? What was he doing?
Oh, rubbing elbows with everyone in those elite circles, dining at the Algonquin, with the famous Round Table Wits or the St. Regis, going to endless parties, soirees on rooftops.
Sounds exhausting.
Maybe. But for him, it was work, too, in a way. Our source suggests these gatherings were where he'd meet collaborators, figure out what audiences liked, sharpen that wit.
And he was out in the nightclubs too, right? The source mentions places like the Café de Paris, the Central Park Casino.
Absolutely. He wasn't just sitting back, he was part of the nightlife. And according to our source, these clubs were like his informal laboratories.
Informal laboratories, what does that mean?
Well, think about it. He's hearing the banter, the jokes, the rhythms of the jazz bands, watching the floor shows.
Oh, okay, soaking it all in.
Exactly. And probably testing out musical ideas, lyrical twists, seeing what landed with that sophisticated crowd. Our source even suggests a lot of his later stage material was sort of road tested in those clubs first.
That makes sense. Now, he did spend quite a bit of time in Europe, as we know.
Yes, but our source is clear. He never lost sight of New York. It always pulled him back.
And his big comeback was on Broadway, wasn't it? 1928, the show Paris.
That's the one. And it gave us Let's Do It, Let's Fall in Love. A quintessential Porter song full of that witty, cosmopolitan flair. Very New York, even though the show was called Paris.
And the theaters themselves became part of his story, too. The Alvin, which is the Neil Simon, now the New Century. The Schubert, the 46th Street.
Yeah.
Now the Richard Rodgers.
Iconic venues. Premiering a Cole Porter musical there was a major event. They're part of his New York legacy, absolutely.
He was also just present in the city's culture, wasn't he? Our source mentions radio broadcasts appearing on Rudy Valley's show.
Oh, yeah, and that movie about his life, Night and Day. He was a New York personality, a known figure.
And he seemed to genuinely love the place. There's that quote from him in our source.
Which one?
I'm in love with places where things happen, where ideas come to life. That's New York.
That really says it all, doesn't it? The energy, the creativity, that's what drew him.
And others saw it too. Irving Berlin called him the most New York of us all.
High praise from Berlin. And Brooks Atkinson, the critic, said he was a man who made the city rhyme.
Wow. Made the city rhyme. I love that.
It's perfect. And our source makes the point that his songs weren't just set in New York sometimes, they were New York.
Can you give some examples?
Sure. Think about Take Me Back to Manhattan. It's witty, a bit satirical, but also kind of homesick for the city's buzz.
Right. Or I happen to like New York. That one feels very personal, just pure affection.
Exactly. And then You're the Top, which is just packed with specific New York references from that era. Waldorf salads, the Metropolitan Opera, all that stuff.
Like a time capsule in a song.
It really is. And even a sadder song like Down in the Depths on the 90th Floor, using a Manhattan skyscraper, that ultimate symbol of modernity and height, to talk about feeling lonely and isolated.
That's a powerful image.
Yeah.
So New York was both the setting and sometimes the subject itself.
Absolutely. He captured its moods, its style, its highs and lows brilliantly.
So for listeners who might want to connect with Porter's New York today, our source has some suggestions.
Yes, there are still tangible links. One really special one is at the Waldorf Astoria.
Ah, the piano.
Exactly. His amazing floral print Steinway grand piano is right there in the Peacock Alley. He lived at the Waldorf Towers for years, so it's a direct connection.
That must be incredible to see.
Yeah.
And the source mentions legacy tours of his actual suite there.
Apparently so, which would be quite something. And of course, those theaters we mentioned, the Neil Simon, the Schubert, the Richard Rodgers, they're still there, still putting on shows. You can stand outside and imagine his opening nights.
That's true.
And if you want to hear his music live, our source suggests checking out places like the Café Carlyle or 54 Below. They often do tributes, keeping his songs alive in that cabaret setting he knew so well.
Good tip. And for serious research.
The New York Public Library for the Performing Arts at Lincoln Center is the place to go. Loads of material there.
So it's clear, isn't it? New York wasn't just a place Porter lived.
Not at all. Our source really drives home that the city shaped him profoundly. And in return, his music became part of the city's very identity. It's a two-way street.
He really did manage to, well, translate the soul of the city into music.
Beautifully put. His songs just capture that New York feeling, even now.
So here's something to think about as we wrap up. How does the spirit of a specific place like New York really get inside an artist and shape what they create?
Yeah, and how does Porter's version of New York, the one in his songs, still feel relevant or resonant in the city today?
Maybe, if you get the chance, go see that piano at the Waldorf. Stand there for a minute and just try to imagine the city that Porter knew, the one that sparked all that incredible music.
Fascinating thought to end on.